Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. A town like any other. A town like any other, that is, except on one day in 1958, this town received a visitor from outer space. A visitor that terrorized the small town community. A visitor known to locals as the Blob. This is Blobfest.
Like a long wait for them to run, didn't it?
Alright. You getting your change then? Like a bag?
Okay.
Yeah, if you go to like any
Alright, thank you. Yeah.
a Stay Puft Marshmallow plus her favorite building. Hey! Wow. Oh, that's great.
I love the way I made the orange kind of get darker as it goes down. I just
Well, some of these t-shirts are kind of...
Oh, it's like I'm really here. I'm good, man. David is Roman, everybody. I saw one earlier, and I was like, oh, that's a neat looking dog, but
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, cute.
Okay, so I'm going to do a review of the movie The Blob, and then give my thoughts in general about Blobfest. Knowing that I was going to see the Blobfest, naturally I wanted to see the movie, so made sure to watch the 1958 original The Blob before going to the festival. And I'd say it's a pretty typical, but if maybe a little bit more high budget compared to many of the others. Example of the 1950s monster movies. So if you've ever seen 1950s monster movies, you kind of know what to expect here, though this one, it seems, is like a bit more watchable for audiences now than many of those are. Now, in some cases, those 1950s monster movies are watched just because of how unwatchable they have become over the years, or may have even started out as being. But this is one that, if you're not into like really cheesy monster movies from the 50s, if you want something that's like maybe not quite as cheesy but gives you that flavor, then The Blob is a good one to go to. It seems to have had a higher budget, and it seems to deal with ideas that may have been a bit easier to bring to the screen using 1950s tech than some of the other more B-movie quality monster films from the 1950s. But, you know, it does have those 1950s monster movie tropes. For example, the main characters are teenagers. You see a lot of teenagers in these kind of movies. No difference here, and the teenagers doing what the 1950s expected teenagers to do, you know, driving out to Lover's Lane, making out, street racing, that kind of thing. Now, monster movies, you know, typically have this one character who knows the danger better than anyone else, but nobody seems to believe them. It has that character, more than one of those actually. You have these overconfident authorities like police. They don't take the threat seriously. They may like try to dismiss it as something like as like a hoax or a prank or something common. You'll see that there. You typically have some kind of doctor or scientist who has his theories about the monster, and through that character you get your exposition about, you know, what the the monster is. The audience, it clues in the audience on that. You get lots of scenes of people just in a panicked run through the streets. And yeah, you can find all of these in the Blob. Things that it does kind of differently is that usually the character who knows the danger and is not believed, oftentimes that overlaps with the doctor or scientist, who's often the doctor or scientist who is the character who knows what's going on, but nobody believes. In this case, it was the teenager, a couple of the teenagers that was that character and was not believed because they were teenagers. They thought they were playing teenage pranks. Whereas often it's the case where the doctor just has wild theories that people don't want to accept, though it turns out in the movie that they're true. The teenagers make up probably a lot more of the film. It probably focuses more on the teenagers than most. But like teenagers are often quite prevalently featured in these films, and they're usually played by adults. And I think that has a lot to do with labor laws. You're only allowed to film for so many hours with a minor, so you can film if your leads are meant to be teenagers. It makes a lot more sense if you're a filmmaker to hire an adult and just say that they're a teenager, and then you can shoot with that adult playing the teenager all day. Where if it was an actual teenager, you'd have a very limited number of hours where you could shoot with that. The doctor character in this, often the doctor character will last to the end of the movie. In this case, he doesn't. So it is definitely typical, but it does have its own spin on the tropes of monster films. Okay, I also want to talk about the design of this particular monster, it's very interesting. This may have been the first time something like this was attempted in monster movies, as far as I know it is. But it's a monster that is just a mass of goo. Being just this big red mass of goo, there's certain ideas that go along with that. It's something that's simple enough visually to be represented using the technology available at the time on the screen in a way that isn't really going to look too silly and dated. So you can watch it now, and the effects will look quaint. Definitely the technology has advanced since then. But it's not going to look overly silly, as some sci-fi and monster movies of the 1950s can now, when you go back and watch them. So it has that advantage, but it's still kind of a frightening monster. The idea is that it's just this goo that can envelop you and eat you by just dissolving you, just disintegrates you, and as it eats, it grows, so it gets larger and larger. So you have this ever-growing danger, yet the size of it, as it grows larger, its size isn't going to offer you any protection. You can't hide in small spaces because being made of this ooze, it can just squeeze under doors and in through vents. So unless you have a completely airtight room, which then you have to worry about running out of oxygen, then it can't get to you. So it is a frightening kind of monster that works well under the technological constraints of the time. The disadvantages, I think, of the Blob as a monster is that it's not expressive at all in the slightest. It has no face. It has no body language. It can't communicate feeling in any way. So there's really no personality that they can get across with the Blob. Now, it's an alien creature, and that lack of personality, that lack of being able to really humanize it, does help it feel more alien. So that mitigates that disadvantage, but a lot of monster movie franchises do get very far on the personality of the monster, which there's really no potential to mine that out of this franchise. If you can even call it franchise. I think it's only had like one remake. So I'm not sure if you if you can call it. Future Harry here. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you might like to know there actually was a sequel to The Blob called Beware the Blob, released in 1972. Actually directed by Larry Hagman of I Dream of Jeannie and Dallas fame. So it's an interesting thing you might want to put on your upcoming movie watching list, past Harry. And I guess I'll be there to watch it with you. I guess that's all. I guess we'll let you get back to the review. There's not really a whole lot of personality that you can get out of the Blob, except for what you want to, like, just overlay, like, in your own mind. You can, in a way, it's kind of a blank slate. You can just, like, put any kind of motivation or personality on it you want, but it's not really going to be, I mean, you're adding that to that. You're not, it's not really in the movie for you to pull out. It's something you're adding to the movie in the viewing experience. That being said, that having gone to Blobfest now, you can see that there are fans of the Blob out there that really do enjoy and, to some extent, humanize this character, at least in like the merchandise they create for him. There was a lot of Blob merchandise. And sometimes we'll add like things like a face or something to the Blob to make it more, make it play more, to make it more expressive, make it get across a personality more. This was an outdoor festival, as you'll probably have seen in the footage by now. I was rather impressed by how committed this festival was to its theme. I've been to festivals, like not long ago I went to a 4th of July festival, and I found that there really wasn't a whole lot of Americana, 4th of July specifically related vendors or booths there. A lot of people that had their booths there. They were selling their wares, they were making their work available, which is great. But you really couldn't just like be dropped in the middle of it and know that it was a 4th of July festival. You can't really tell that from what's going on. It could be a festival for really anything. Not so at Blobfest. Blobfest, most of the booths and vendors were related to the movie in some way. The vendors may have been selling merchandise directly related to the Blob. There was a lot of that. And then there was a lot that were related to just monster movies in general, pop culture, sci-fi, horror, fantasy. It was a lot. It was kind of like a comic book convention, but it was an outdoor festival. There was even a costume contest that we caught part of, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this festival of niche geekiness going on in the middle of this small town, and it was really fun to see the theater, the movie theater. That there was in the movie there's a rather iconic shot of people just running out of movie theater where the Blob attacked. And that movie theater is still there, on the street. It's pretty fun to actually see that. Looking, I'm pretty sure it's just been restored that way, but it's looking very much like it did in the movie, at least the theater itself. Now, the area around it looks very different. In fact, I believe it looked very different back in the day because they shot what was the diner across the street from it in a completely different town, from what I hear. But it was very fun. One of the events that we could have done as part of the festival that we we didn't make time for this, unfortunately, is that there were screenings of the film, as well as the remake, in that theater. So that would have been very interesting to be in that theater and see that theater on the screen as you're sitting in it. So a very interesting idea. But I had a ball. I had a really good time. And with regards to the movie, yeah, I would recommend it. I recommend it for fans of 50s monster movies, or anyone that's curious about 50s monster movies but may have been put off by the silliness of low-budget 50s B movies. This one's not so low budget, so I think the silliness is kind of to a minimum here, and I think it's more watchable than most. So I would say if you're on the fence about it for that reason, give it a shot.